On Thursday, Starved Rock Country state legislators talked LaSalle County hospitals, online addiction, and the ongoing fight for tax dollars. This was all at a Thursday luncheon. Hi, thanks for being here, and thanks to Kathleen Whalen of Whalen Financial in LaSalle for sponsoring this weekend voyage of discovery. Republican State Senator Sue Rezin and Democratic State Representative Lance Yednock appeared at Thursday's annual legislative luncheon put on by the Illinois Valley Area Chamber of Commerce. IVAC's Bill Zenz conducted a Q&A, and throughout the session, Rezin and Yednock reinforced their reputation for mutual respect and a non-partisan approach. This was demonstrated last year when the two teamed up to mitigate the damage from the closure of both St. Margaret's healthcare facilities. And on that subject, the two expressed hope that OSF and the city of Ottawa will each compromise a bit on the question of moving healthcare services away from that city, while recognizing that Ottawa would get a brand new hospital in the deal. They agree that child care should be easier to get and pay for, too. Rezin says she's putting together a raft of bills in Springfield that would help protect minors from being victimized by algorithms that are meant to addict them to being online. You'll hear more about that. Yednock is retiring from Springfield after the November veto session. His replacement will be either Democrat Murray Briel or Republican Liz Bishop. And he says whoever wins the upcoming election will have to continue to push for rural interests, and tax dollars is really what that means, in the face of pressure from more populated areas. You know, it's never easy to trim 90 minutes down to fit a 10-minute window, but I think you're going to see what I think are some of the more compelling parts of the Q&A.
I am working on legislation that will start to put bumpers in place for the social media platforms to protect our minors from the algorithms written to addict the minors and keep them on that phone. What is happening is the longer you're on that phone, right, the more data they're collecting. Data is valuable. Data is gold today. So the more data we collect, the companies collect, then they take the data and they sell them, and then they're advertised to.
So it's been an interesting, what I thought was going to be a quiet last year in the legislature for me turned out to be pretty eventful, especially when it came to 4:30 in the morning to pass the budget and the revenue package. So that's where I'll leave it at. We're splitting up DCFS and doing the all child care under a new agency. This was one of Governor Pritzker's main issues this year. And so that is being created to where anything that has to do with child care, the licensing, curriculum, is going to be centered under a single agency in the future. Now, I think we appropriated like $13 million to get this started, so it's going to take a little bit. But once again, we could do one large thing and see how it works out, but they're creating an agency to try to put everything under that umbrella. And we'll have to come up with more funds to try to get more people to go into child care, and whether that's through university programs or community college programs or some other sort of training. These are things that we're talking about, but believe me, there are a lot of interests that don't necessarily want to see things change, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it's not as easy as saying we just need more child care workers and more support for it, and so pass it. There's a lot of people that come out for and against these types of issues.
Yeah, so I'll just add a couple of things. So the governor's priority this year was to start an early childhood department. So typically when we hear new government, new department, it's not something that we support in our caucus, but I have been on board from day one, and here's why. So whoever asked that question, you're 100% correct. Child care is very expensive, and there's a lack of capacity, and it's difficult to get your license. Those three things. So we did take the ability to get your license away from DCFS, which has many challenges, and we've put them into the new Department of Early Childhood Care, and it's kind of all-inclusive in that area. But what will happen is the 5 different entities that we're currently getting funding in that area ultimately will be funneled through to this new department. So that will create more consistency, create that more reliability and ability to get answers quickly as opposed to going to different silos for different questions. It is very difficult for especially women to get back into the labor force because childcare is very expensive. So if you can't get your child into daycare, which someone from my office had to wait quite a while to get her son into daycare, or for the cost of it, women are the last people to re-enter the workforce because of this. So there are child care tax credits that were also implemented as well. So this is probably one of the bigger, if not the biggest issues in Springfield as we speak. In terms of finding enough people to work in this, in child care and at daycares, labor work shortage across the board, regardless of whether you're in a daycare, nursing home, hospital, teacher, there's a labor shortage, right? Major labor shortage. So we're going to see bills that will deal with short-term fixes for the labor shortage, in my opinion, but the long-term answer is much more complex and a bigger issue that will be a federal and a state collaboration in the future.
But this question is the length of time it's taking the IDNR to make progress on Matheson and Mostard addition is being noticed. What is the holdup? Why is it taking so long?
It's just such a large area that they have to do surveys. There are abandoned mine shafts back there. They're worried about people being lost if we just open it up and let people start wandering out there. There's a lake back there from the mining process. It's a beautiful lake, and they got some plans for that. But at the same time, we don't have enough personnel. We don't have enough conservation officers. You can see at Matheson, Starved Rock, Buffalo Rock, Lionite, we don't have enough people that work for the DNR right now.
Now, I mentioned the legislators' teamwork and mutual kindness and respect, and you might think that that's pretty common in Springfield. Well, it used to be more common. Today, when you're talking about a Democrat in one chamber and a Republican in another chamber working together, it might raise some eyebrows, and it's a shame. Because these two really have shown how well people of different parties and houses can work together for the common good. And that was really on display last year when St. Margaret's Healthcare imploded. Those two got to work, and they stayed at work for us. Here's some of the talk around that from Thursday's Q&A.
When the two hospitals closed, I asked for millions of dollars to try to keep a float loan going while one of them stayed open so we could try to figure all this out, but I didn't get it, and consequently they closed. And that put a huge burden on OSF's operation in Ottawa. Now, gratefully, they took over the Prue Hospital and have opened it up, but they're in the same position as any other hospital system. They have to figure out how to keep healthcare regional now and make sure that they don't have to close their doors on any of these places. And I know it doesn't sound great. I live in Ottawa. I said to OSF, it feels like the community, some of the community members feel like we're losing something. I would say now on the other side of this, they're willing to build a brand new hospital. And I went through a lot of the data and a lot of the hearings and seminars with all the healthcare providers. We don't need 400 beds or 250 beds in the region. You don't need necessarily a 70 or 80 bed hospital anymore unless you're a university system in Chicago. And so they're trying to right-size their operation here in the region and stay open. I'm for them building a new hospital. I'll say that right off the bat. And a new hospital with more efficient services or more services, the potential is there to grow. And so it feels like we're losing something in Ottawa right now, but I take the other side of this in some regards and say, okay, we can negotiate. Maybe they can add a few more beds if we need it, which I think has always been their position. Maybe they have to look at the intensive care. And instead of them walking away from, a hospital at all in Ottawa, which makes me a little bit nervous that they could do that because they are a private entity. We should be working with them and trying to convince them to, see us on a thing. I never want things to get out of hand, and we have to keep our decorum the way it should be. If they can figure out how to maybe do the transportation issues, maybe add more things in the future, I think we'll probably still be better off. And if not, and if they walk away from us, my concern is our community, our county going to come up with $50 or $60 million to get to another healthcare system to come in? We look for other systems as just out of our due diligence when these two were closing over here. Quite honestly, no one wants to take the risk, the $100 million, $150 million risk.
So the economy picked up after the pandemic, but this past year there was almost $1 billion in revenue enhancements, additional taxes to be able to quote unquote balance the budget. You have to look at why is this budget increasing? And we have a lot of costs in this budget and in future budgets for the non-citizens who have come into the state. Now I say regardless of what side of the topic you're on, we had an influx of non-citizens because several years ago we became a sanctuary state. So we have probably, I don't know how many came into Chicago. There's a cost to housing non-citizens, there's a cost for health care, there's a cost for education. Right now, and we are trying to get the exact cost because the governor's and his administration is not very transparent about those costs, but we estimate that cost this year was $1.5 billion, right? That money has to come from somewhere, especially if your revenues are not increasing. That cost will not come down next year, and so that cost will have to be paid for somehow. The question is, will it be with additional taxes in the future? I don't know. Or how will that be handled? I do not see, like I say, right now, there are very generous benefits, regardless of what side of that topic you're on. We in Springfield have to pay for it. Now, if it's not new taxes, it's potentially cuts to education, which we don't want to cut because we've worked very hard to get additional funding for our school districts, which is incredibly important. These are the tough issues we're going to see in the next year or two.
Well, whoever wins Lance Yednock's seat will have big shoes to fill, but as long as she, regardless of who she is, works in the Yednock way, we'll be well ahead of other areas that don't have bipartisan, bicameral cooperation among their legislators. Thanks to Kathleen Whalen of Whalen Financial in downtown LaSalle for her sponsorship of Tom's Take. And thank you for checking it out this weekend. I'll talk to you in the morning.